not afraid to engage people, and I'm not the kind of person who would back down if someone's being belligerent. I would just say, look, this right. I will explain calmly and rationally about what's going on here, what I'm trying to explain, what I'm not doing, and also the mistakes you're making in misunderstanding me, and and that would just set them off more, and I'd just be like, okay, fair enough, see you later.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But I just love rattling people's cages though.
Yeah.
There's one site I go on, and I message quite a few people on there, and just ask them, really interesting questions like, if you didn't have to worry about money, would you do your job for free? I mean, I sometimes ask this of people working on a checkout aisle in the supermarket. I ask them, if you didn't have to worry about money, would you do the job for free? And 95% of them would be like, no. And then I'd say, well, what would you devote your life to then? And 95% of the time, it's something good, wholesome, altruistic, and beneficial to humankind. And then I ask them, would you like to live in a kind of world where you wouldn't have to worry about money? And they're like, and I'm like, okay, tell you what, is that okay if I give you a leaflet? I give them a leaflet, But it is interesting how different changes can have different effects. I mean, like say for example, if you were to think back over the course of your advocacy of the scientific method to social and environmental concern, would you say that there are any memorable situations where something has cropped up, or someone has said something or done something that really taught you a certain lesson about human behavior and human psychology?
Good question.
Because this is one thing that I've found is a good testing ground for being able to call someone out for logical fallacies, or to identify cognitive dissonance, for example, and they're just like, oh, what the hell's cognitive dissonance? I'm like, well, it's holding two diametrically opposed positions at the same time and acknowledging it. But
not really, Adam. I mean, the one time I was at a local festival, and we had our TZM booth set up, and there's generally I can get through to just about everyone, and those who I'm not able to get through to, there's something going on within them. There's this particular gentleman just one of these love is all we need. I was like, I agree, but let's break it down and let's look at what is the reason for there being a lack of love here.
Yes, yeah.
He just he wouldn't hear it. It was just he was afraid to understand. There's something he didn't want to abandon his mantra, his position. He didn't want to abandon his. And so that's what I also think it is. It's ego with a lot of this stuff. Is this resistance to understanding? It's all of this. It's ego. It's not wanting to be wrong. Not wanting to admit that I have been
duped.
Duped, living a lie. But generally, I can really get through to most people if they're open to have a really open, understanding conversation. So, not in particular.
Yeah. So, I mean, how would you say? Because obviously, as both human beings and as human beings who identify ourselves as socially conscious or activists or whatever term we wish to put on, the activity of being engaged in social change. I've definitely found with myself, there's had to be a period of maturation where I've discovered that certain approaches are are positive and they yield positive results, and some approaches really aren't positive at all. There's definitely that process within my particular evolution, as it were, as an activist, and you say that you're more or less able to get through to everyone. How would you say that your ability to do that has been informed? How is it possibly the way you are as a person is conducive to being able to engage these kind of people productively without conflict, or is there particular disciplines that you've engaged with or taught yourself?
Honestly, man, I would say I really cherry pick. Probably is what it is. I cherry pick who I would speak to about this. Is last night. Let's see here. Last night I was engaged with somebody who had seen the first Zeitgeist documentary, and I was able to say, all right, I don't want to, because man, if you start getting on this conversation, it is long-winded.
Oh yeah.
It's and I'm not always just interested in getting into a long-winded conversation about this and try and win something over. So I generally will have a short little burst of let's say, I would say something like, I think what I told him was, okay, well, the second two movies, what you'll find is that the root causes for all of our woes, all the world woes, are explained in this film. And I will say to you that it relates to I would say something like, it relates to scarcity and how our monetary system is absolutely reliant on scarcity to exist.
Yeah.
And, I just don't go too into it. And, I just say a few things where I get a couple head nods like, okay, yeah. So, check out the movies. And he'll be like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to go check them out. I had no idea there are two more. So I think it's more like that. I'm not trying to really probe and get into a deep discussion when I'm out and about. I generally have to put on like my activist hat on if I'm just going to, you know what I'm saying, if I'm going to plan to be spending my hours in discussion on this material. Yeah. Otherwise, if I'm just kind of out and about doing my thing, I'm just going to kind of drop a seed, and hopefully they'll go and water it by checking out more material on their own.
Yeah, because you can't have your activist head on all the time. I mean, that's how people burn out. Right. I mean, I've found myself that I can have my activist head firmly on like for a full 24 hours, and by the end of it, I'm just like, oh god. Right, yeah. I start getting headaches and shit. And yeah.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, I enjoy going to like events where, okay, every conversation I'm gonna have is going to be related to a resource-based economic model or something, something like that. So that's good for me. But when I'm just kind of like out and about, I'm not really looking for that conversation unless the conversation naturally emerges. But I'm not really trying to just get caught up in a long-winded conversation with, that's just where I'm at right now in my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, would you say that, like say for example, the successful discussions that you have, and when I say successful discussions, I mean a discussion, regardless of the length, but it ends in the person thanking you for the information or saying that they will look into it, and that they will look into it because enough evidence has been presented that they are interested in it. How much of a percentage of those conversations are ones that you initiated, as opposed to the conversations that they initiated?
Well, I probably initiated it. Or, I would probably say a conversation naturally emerged, and at some point somehow, I was able to then bring in the information. So I don't know if it would just be more of like in a conversation about something, and then that person would start to bitch or complain about something in the world or
that's
in their
our
life,
way in.
and that's how you get in, you know.
Yeah, I've found that a lot of different social situations, however brief, are still, possible to steer towards that. As long as, like, you could say, so, like, say for example, if you're waiting at the bus stop, and maybe the weather is being a bit schizophrenic that day, you could comment on that, and just to make friendly conversation as two strangers at a bus stop, just exchanging a few words. But if you might talk about the fact that the buses are late, and you go, well, what will be easier than buses, and then you can, you could do it. So, there are so many different ways that I've experimented with, and I've found varied results with them. But yeah, I mean, it all depends on what mindset you're in, really, because the thing is, you've got to have time for yourself, even when you're out socializing. You've got to, have a head on where you're, just thinking about, interacting with people and, engaging with them on the social level as a friend, where you ask them, how have you been, if there's something going on in their life that you're helping them with, how's it going with that, and you can do things like that when you're in that capacity where you can just think to yourself, right, I just need to be Tyson today, and as opposed to the other times where I can just be full on activist. But if anyone asks me, then I'll plant a seed, give them a DVD, whatever. Yeah, I probably do more or less the same thing as well, and I've found that it is good to switch back and forth. It's almost like having two different personalities in a way. Have you found that?
Yeah, it is. It is like having two different personalities. That's wow. Yeah, I don't know why it's the first time for me to like really step back and look at it like that, but it really is.
Yeah.
It's like a job. I don't know. It's like I see it as more like a job and being an activist, and I'm either going to be doing work as an informer, or I'm just going to be an observer.
Yeah, because thing.
Days.
I mean, being an observer, that's really the passive position.
Yeah.
But if you're, but the thing is, even when you are observing things, like say for example, if you're in a social situation, like say for example, if you've got the family around and you're all watching TV or whatever, and the news comes on, and your eyes start to glaze over, you start looking around the room because you don't really want to watch the depressing shit that's on the screen. So
right.
You just start twiddling your thumbs, and other people pick up on that, and they're like, why don't you want to watch this? I'm like, because I don't want to hang myself in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, other people, can pick up on that. So there is a social dynamic to just even observing, even though that's, the sort of quasi-passive stance. But being an informer, as you referred to it, that's also, the positive thing that we do. I mean, like I said, you are right. It is a job in a sense, and I do sometimes phrase it that way because if someone asks me, like if someone like meets me for the first time and asks me, so what do you do? And my mail merge answer for that is these exact words: do you mean what do I do for money, or do you mean what do I do for humanity? Oh. And that sort of stumps them a little bit, and they're like, well, I suppose what you do for money, because because when they say, what do you do, they mean a job. What do you
Right.
do